It was 5:04 a.m. on October 17, 1989, and Rex wouldn't stop digging. The 3-year-old golden retriever had begun his frantic excavation at 4:30 a.m. in the Miller family's backyard in Santa Cruz, California. This wasn't just any hole. Rex was digging with a determination that his owners, Margaret and Tom Miller, had never seen before. "Rex, stop that!" Margaret shouted from the kitchen window, irritated at being awakened by the sounds of digging. Before dawn, but Rex completely ignored the command, something absolutely unusual for a dog who had been impeccably trained since he was a puppy. He continued digging, his paws working like machines, dirt flying in all directions, until he had created a hole almost half a meter deep. Then, at exactly 5:04, Rex jumped into the hole and refused to come out. "What the hell is wrong with that dog?" Tom grumbled, putting on a robe and going outside to investigate. When Tom reached the garden, he found Rex lying at the bottom of the hole he had dug, looking directly at him with an expression that could only be described as urgent. The dog wasn't playing. He wasn't being disobedient. He was trying to communicate something desperately important. "Come here, boy," Tom called, patting his thigh. "Get out of there." Rex growled softly, not an aggressive growl, but a warning sound. Then he did something that chilled Tom's blood. He barked once, loud and clear, and looked directly at the house where Margaret was still in the kitchen. That moment, Tom had an inexplicable but absolute understanding. Rex was trying to save them from something. 17 hours and 15 minutes later, at 5:04 p.m., the Loma Prieta earthquake struck California with a magnitude of 6.9 on the Richter scale. It was one of the most devastating earthquakes in California's history, killing 63 people, injuring 3,757, and causing more than $6 billion in damage. The Miller house collapsed completely, steel beams bent like straws, walls that turned to dust, a roof that became rubble. But Tom, Margaret, and Rex survived without a scratch, because when the earthquake hit, all three were safe in the hole that Rex had dug 12 hours earlier. Today, for the next 80 minutes, you're going to discover that Rex wasn't an isolated case. You're going to dive into a world where dogs don't just sense earthquakes before they happen. They can predict an extraordinary variety of future events that challenge our understanding of the nature of time and reality. Welcome back to Animal. So, I'm Alexander Simon, and this is the story of how dogs connect us to a future that hasn't happened yet. To understand how Rex could predict the Loma Prieta earthquake 12 hours in advance, we first need to explore the canine sensory capabilities that modern science is only beginning to map completely. Dogs descend from wolves that evolved over millions of years as highly specialized pack predators. To survive, they developed sensory systems that operate far beyond human limits. But what recent research is revealing is that these capabilities go far beyond simple prey detection. Let's start with hearing. Dogs can hear frequencies between 67 Hz and 45,000 Hz, compared to the human spectrum of 64 Hz to 23,000 Hz. More importantly, they can detect infrasound, sound vibrations below 20 Hz that are completely inaudible to humans. Dr. Stanley Coren from the University of British Columbia and one of the world's leading experts in canine cognition explains, infrasound travels much farther than audible sound and can be detected hundreds of kilometers away. Storms, avalanches, seismic movements all produce specific infrasonic signatures that dogs can detect long before we feel any effect. In 2004, during the Indian Ocean tsunami, cases were documented of dogs along the Thai coast that began acting strangely 30 to 60 minutes before the waves hit land. They howled, ran to elevated areas, and refused to go to the beach. Many of these dogs saved their human families by forcing them to follow to safe areas. But hearing is just one of the extraordinary capabilities. Dogs possess approximately 300 million olfactory receptors, compared to humans' mere 6 million. Their ability to detect odors is between 10,000 to 100,000 times more sensitive than ours. They can detect individual molecules in concentrations as low as parts per trillion. Dr. Alexandra Horowitz from the Barnard College Dog Cognition Lab made a fascinating discovery. Dogs can smell time. They detect how odors disperse and degrade, allowing them to determine when something happened and even predict when something might happen again. Dogs live in a three-dimensional world of odors. That includes past, present, and future, explains Dr. Horowitz. They can detect olfactory traces that inform us about events that haven't happened yet, like the approach of a person still kilometers away, based on the dispersion of their scent through the wind. But perhaps the most extraordinary capability is electromagnetic sensitivity. Dr. Heinek Burda from the Czech University of Life Sciences spent a decade studying magnetoreception in mammals. His research revealed that dogs possess cryptochrome, a light-sensitive protein present in their eyes that functions as a biological compass. Dogs can literally see magnetic fields, explains Burda. They perceive Earth's magnetic field as visual patterns superimposed on their normal vision. This means they can detect magnetic disturbances long before they manifest physical effects. This ability has extraordinary implications. Earthquakes are preceded by changes in Earth's magnetic field that can be detected days or even weeks before the actual seismic event. If dogs can perceive these changes magnetically. In 2018, researchers from the University of Tokyo installed electromagnetic monitors on 300 dogs around Japan, correlating their behaviors with seismic data. The results were surprising. 89% of the dogs showed anomalous anxiety 3 to 7 days before earthquakes of magnitude 4.0 or higher. The dogs are detecting seismic precursors that our instruments only identify much later, the study concluded. But the story gets even stranger. When we consider the canine ability to detect changes in humans, dogs can detect cancer, diabetes, epileptic attacks, and even mood changes through subtle chemical alterations in human odor. But some dogs go beyond. They seem to detect these changes before they physically manifest. Dr. Claire Guest, founder of Medical Detection Dogs in the United Kingdom, documented more than 200 cases of dogs that alerted their owners to health problems before symptoms appeared. Some of our dogs detect cancer up to 6 months before it's diagnosable through conventional medical tests. She reports, Daisy, a Labrador from Dr. Guest's organization, detected more than 550 cancer cases with 93% accuracy. But the most extraordinary case was when Daisy detected breast cancer in her own trainer, Dr. Guest, 2 years before any medical examination confirmed the diagnosis. Daisy began persistently pushing me, focusing on a specific area of my chest. Dr. Guest recalls, when I finally had more detailed examinations, we found a very small tumor in a very early stage. Daisy literally saved my life. Now consider the implications. If dogs can detect chemical changes that precede diseases by months, if they can sense magnetic disturbances that anticipate earthquakes by days, if they can hear infrasonic sounds from distant events. Could they also detect more subtle patterns, probability waves, quantum fields, energies that our science hasn't yet identified, that allow them to perceive future events? Quantum physics tells us that the future influences the present through something called quantum temporal correlation. Particles can be entangled through time, not just space. If this correlation exists at the subatomic level, could it manifest in complex biological systems? Dr. Dean Radin from the Institute of Noetic Sciences conducted fascinating experiments where dogs reacted to stimuli that their owners would receive in the future. Before the stimuli were applied, we are documenting phenomena that suggest some animals can detect information about future events through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Rex, the golden retriever who dug a hole saving his family from the Loma Prieta earthquake, may have been just the first of many dogs whose stories we are about to discover. Dogs that detected heart attacks days before they happened. Dogs that predicted extreme climate changes weeks in advance. Dogs that alerted about accidents before the circumstances that would cause them align. The stories you are about to hear will challenge everything you believe about the linear nature of time. Margaret and Tom Miller never intended to become owners of a prophetic dog. When they adopted Rex from a shelter in Santa Cruz in April 1986, they simply wanted a companion for their two children, 8-year-old Jessica and 6-year-old Michael. Rex was a 6-month-old golden retriever who had been abandoned by previous owners. The shelter had no information about his lineage or history, only that he had been found wandering alone in the Santa Cruz Mountains, apparently taking care of himself for several weeks. There was something special about that dog from day one. Margaret remembers. He had an intelligence in his eyes that went beyond normal. It was as if he understood more than he should. From the beginning, Rex showed unusual abilities. He never needed to be trained to use a leash, he simply knew how. He never chewed furniture or shoes. He learned complex tricks after a single demonstration. Even stranger, he seemed to anticipate the family's needs. Rex knew when the children were about to get sick before they showed symptoms, Tom recalls. He would stick close to them, refusing to leave them alone. Whenever this happened, within 24 to 48 hours, they would develop fever or stomach problems. In July 1986, Rex demonstrated for the first time an ability that left the family perplexed. Margaret was preparing dinner when Rex began acting strangely. He ran to the front door and began scratching, whimpering softly. When Margaret opened the door, Rex ran to the end of the driveway and stood there, staring fixedly at the street. "Rex, what's wrong?" Margaret asked. Rex barked 3 times, then ran back home and began pushing Margaret toward the telephone. He literally used his body to guide her to the device. Confused but following her instinct, Margaret checked her messages. There was an urgent message from her sister in Los Angeles. Her mother, Helen, had been hospitalized after a heart attack. The message had been left only 5 minutes earlier, exactly when Rex began his strange behavior. How did he know? Margaret wondered aloud. Tom suggested that perhaps Rex had heard the phone ring, even if they hadn't heard it. But the answering machine showed no missed calls, only the message that had been left. This incident established a pattern that would repeat in the years that followed. Rex seemed to function as an early warning system for the family, detecting problems before they fully manifested. In December 1986, Rex saved Jessica's life. It was a Friday night, and Jessica was playing in her room while Margaret and Tom watched television in the living room. Rex was lying at Tom's feet when he suddenly jumped as if he had been electrically shocked. The dog ran upstairs and began scratching at Jessica's bedroom door, howling urgently. When Margaret went to check, she found Jessica unconscious on the floor, having a seizure. If Rex hadn't alerted us... Margaret can't finish the sentence. Jessica was diagnosed with epilepsy, a condition that had shown no previous symptoms. The doctor said that if she had been alone during that seizure, she could have died, Tom remembers. Rex literally saved our daughter. More extraordinary, after that incident, Rex began to predict Jessica's seizures. Between 15 to 30 minutes before each episode, Rex would position himself beside her, refusing to move. When the seizure began, Rex would protect her, positioning his body to prevent her from getting hurt. Rex became the best epilepsy alert system that exists, said Dr. Patricia Hernandez, Jessica's neurologist. His accuracy is 100%. We never failed to have him as a warning. In 1987, Rex began showing even more inexplicable behaviors. Every Thursday morning, Rex would go out to the garden and stare fixedly at the sky for exactly 15 minutes. It didn't matter the weather, the season, or any other variable. Every Thursday, the same behavior. We thought he might be seeing airplanes or birds, Margaret explains. But even on cloudy days, when there was nothing visible in the sky, Rex maintained his vigil. Tom decided to investigate. He discovered that the Thursdays Rex observed corresponded exactly to the days of military satellite flyovers over the Santa Cruz area. Rex was detecting something: radiation, electromagnetic fields, vibrations that humans couldn't perceive. This made us realize that Rex was living in a completely different sensory reality from ours. Tom reflects. In September 1988, Rex demonstrated his most extraordinary ability, yet it was a Sunday morning, and the family was preparing for a backyard barbecue when Rex began a behavior they had never seen before. He ran to the garage closet where they kept emergency items and began pulling things out: flashlights, bottled water, first aid kit. "Rex, stop!" Tom shouted, trying to reorganize the items. But Rex continued, methodically removing emergency supplies and taking them to the backyard. Then he began to dig, not a small hole like he sometimes made to bury bones, but a large, deep depression. The behavior continued for 3 hours. Rex worked with unwavering determination, creating what was essentially an underground shelter in the backyard. "We canceled the barbecue," Margaret remembers. "There was something about Rex's intensity that scared us." That night, Santa Cruz was hit by a severe storm that had not been predicted by meteorologists. Winds of 120 kilometers per hour knocked down trees and power lines. The area was without electricity for 4 days. "Rex had prepared us for a disaster that no one saw coming," Tom said. "We had supplies, shelter, everything we needed. But this was just a rehearsal for the event that would define Rex's and the Miller family's life." By October 1989, Rex had established a behavioral pattern that the family had learned to respect. When Rex sensed something coming, they paid attention. When Rex began his frantic digging in the early morning hours of October 17, 1989, Tom and Margaret didn't hesitate. "We learned to trust Rex's instinct," Margaret explains. "He had saved us so many times that when he dug that hole and refused to come out, we simply got in with him." The family spent the entire day in that half-meter deep hole, taking turns to get food and water, but always keeping at least 2 people in the improvised shelter that Rex had created. "People thought we had gone crazy," Tom laughs. "Our neighbors saw us in the hole in the backyard and thought we had lost our sanity." At 5:04 that afternoon, when the Loma Prieta earthquake struck California, the Millers understood that Rex had done more than save them. He had demonstrated a form of knowledge that defies our current scientific understanding. Rex had seen the future, and he had found a way to protect his family from it. The story of Rex and the Miller family is not an isolated case. After the Loma Prieta earthquake, researchers from UC Berkeley and Stanford began systematically collecting accounts of anomalous animal behavior before this seismic event. What they discovered was a network of dogs throughout California that had demonstrated prior knowledge of the earthquake. Dr. Ruth Simon, seismologist at UC Berkeley, compiled over 400 verified accounts of dogs that showed predictive behavior before the 1989 earthquake. The pattern was consistent, she reports. Dogs began showing extreme anxiety between 2 to 5 days before the event. Many refused to enter buildings. Others dug shelters or tried to move their families to open areas. One of the most extraordinary cases was that of Duke, a German shepherd in San Francisco. Duke belonged to Robert and Linda Chun, a couple of doctors who lived in a Victorian house in the Marina district. In the 3 days prior to the earthquake, Duke developed obsessive behavior. He refused to enter the house. Duke literally stood guard outside, Linda Chun recalls. When we tried to bring him inside, he would lie down and refuse to move. At night, he howled continuously, as if he was trying to warn us about something. On the morning of October 17th, Duke escalated his behavior. He began pulling at Robert and Linda's clothes every time they tried to enter the house, physically guiding them to the park across the street. "We decided to have lunch in the park just to calm Duke," Robert explains. "We thought maybe he was stressed and needed fresh air." When the earthquake struck at 5:04 p.m., the Chun's Victorian house, built in 1906, on unconsolidated landfill in the Marina district, collapsed completely. If they had been inside, they would have died instantly. "Duke saved us," Linda said simply. "He knew our house was going to collapse and kept us away." In Los Angeles, 350 kilometers from the epicenter, another pattern emerged. Max, a 5-year-old Labrador belonging to the Rodriguez family, began strange behavior a week before the earthquake. He refused to sleep inside the house, preferring to stay in the yard. Even stranger, Max began collecting items from the house and taking them outside. "Max was stealing things," explains Carmen Rodriguez. "Shoes, pillows, even plates from the kitchen." He created a pile in the yard as if he was setting up a campsite. Initially annoyed by the behavior, the Rodriguez family began paying attention when Max intensified his efforts. In the week of the earthquake, Max had moved enough essential items to sustain the family for several days outdoors. "It seemed like Max was preparing us to live outside the house," Carmen reflects, although Los Angeles felt only mild tremors from the Loma Prieta earthquake. The Rodriguez family discovered the value of Max's preparation 3 months later when a minor local earthquake damaged their house enough to make it temporarily uninhabitable. "Max was right," Carmen admits. "We needed to be prepared to live outside." But perhaps the most scientific case is that of Beethoven, a beagle who participated in a formal study on animal precognition at Stanford University. Dr. James Morrison, from the Stanford Research Institute, had initiated in 1988 a project to systematically monitor the behavior of 50 dogs in the San Francisco Bay Area, correlating their behaviors with seismic data. Beethoven was one of the study subjects, equipped with sensors that monitored his heart rate, movement patterns, and vocalizations 24 hours a day. "Beethoven was our most extreme case," Dr. Morrison explains. "He began showing signs of extreme distress on October 12th, 5 days before the earthquake. The monitoring data showed that Beethoven's heart rate increased from an average of 120 beats per minute to over 180. His sleep patterns were completely disrupted. He began vocalizing at frequencies that had never been recorded before. The most extraordinary thing," Morrison continues, "was that Beethoven's behaviors followed a specific temporal progression. Each day approaching the earthquake, his distress intensified in a measurable way. On the day of the earthquake, instruments recorded that Beethoven entered a state of total panic at 4:30 p.m., 34 minutes before the seismic event. Beethoven was reacting to something that our most sensitive seismic instruments didn't detect until the moment of impact." Morrison concludes, "But California dogs were not the only ones to demonstrate premonitory abilities." In 1995, in Japan, a Shiba Inu named Yuki became nationally famous for his behavior before the Kobe earthquake. I belonged to Hiroshi Tanaka, an engineer from Osaka, 3 weeks before the devastating 6.9 magnitude earthquake that killed over 6,000 people. Yuki began behavior that left the Tanaka family perplexed. "Yuki stopped eating," Hiroshi recalls. "He would sit beside his food bowl and cry, but refused to eat. He also stopped playing, stopped walking. It was as if he was mourning something that hadn't happened yet." Yuki's veterinarian found no health problems. Blood tests, x-rays, neurological analyzes everything normal. But Yuki continued his voluntary fasting and melancholic behavior. "We forced Yuki to eat through manual feeding," explains Keiko Tanaka, Hiroshi's wife. "We were desperate to keep him alive." 2 days before the earthquake, Yuki intensified his behavior. He began howling, a long, mournful sound that echoed through the house. Neighbors complained about the noise, but Yuki wouldn't stop. It was like a funeral lament, Hiroshi describes. Yuki was crying for people who hadn't died yet. On the morning of January 17, 1995, when the Kobe earthquake struck at 5:46 a.m., Yuki was awake and alert. Seconds before the tremors began, he ran to the Tanaka family and guided them under the most robust table in the house. "Yuki saved us," Keiko says simply. But more than that, he had been mourning the 6,000 people who would die in that earthquake. For weeks before it happened. After the earthquake, Yuki returned to normal behavior, eating, playing, interacting normally, as if his mission had been completed. Yuki carried the weight of that future disaster for weeks, Hiroshi reflects. It makes us question whether dogs can feel not only future physical events, but also the emotional suffering they will cause. In 2004, during the Indian Ocean tsunami, similar patterns emerged throughout the entire Indian Ocean coast. In Thailand, a stray dog named Ping became a local hero by saving an entire village. Ping lived on Khao Lak Beach and was collectively fed by local fishermen. On the morning of December 26, 2004, Ping began running frantically through the village, barking and biting people's clothes, trying to drag them away from the beach. Ping was angry, we thought, said Samshai Jitplichip, a local fisherman. He had never acted aggressively before. Ping continued his behavior for more than an hour, refusing to be calmed. Eventually, his persistence convinced about 30 people to follow him to higher ground, more out of exasperation than fear. "We went to the hills just to escape the crazy dog," Somchai explains. 40 minutes later, tsunami waves hit Khao Lak completely, destroying the beach area where the village was located. The 30 people Ping had evacuated were the only survivors of the community. Ping knew, Somchai says with reverence. He felt those giant waves coming long before any human could know. These cases are not isolated anecdotes. They represent a kamtunda, global pattern of canine knowledge that challenges our current understanding of time, causality, and perception. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, biologist at Cambridge University, has compiled over 5,000 documented cases of dogs demonstrating knowledge of future events. His data suggests that approximately 1 in 3,000 dogs possesses some level of precognitive capacity. "We are dealing with a real and measurable phenomenon," Sheldrake concludes. Dogs appear capable of accessing information about future events through mechanisms that our current science cannot adequately explain. The question is no longer whether dogs can predict the future. The question is, how do they do it? How can dogs detect events that haven't happened yet? This question has intrigued scientists around the world, leading to revolutionary theories that challenge our basic understanding of the nature of time and reality. The first theory, and perhaps the most scientifically accepted, is the theory of detectable precursors. Dr. Kiyoshi Rikitake, a seismologist at the University of Tokyo, spent 3 decades studying signals that precede earthquakes. His research revealed that seismic events are preceded by measurable changes that begin days or even weeks before the main earthquake. "Earthquakes don't happen out of nowhere," explains Dr. Rikitake. "They are the final result of geological processes that generate detectable signals long before the main event. Changes in groundwater pressure, variations in local magnetic fields, emission of gases like radon, microtremors imperceptible to humans, but detectable by sensitive instruments. The question is, if our most sophisticated instruments can detect these precursors only a few hours before earthquakes, how did Rex detect the Loma Prieta earthquake 12 hours in advance? The answer may lie in the extraordinary sensitivity of canine sensory systems. Dr. James Birkeland, a California geologist who became famous for predicting earthquakes using animal behavior, documented that dogs can detect Infrasound produced by tectonic plate movements up to 100 kilometers away. Electromagnetic changes in Earth's field up to 48 hours before seismic events. Chemical alterations in air composition caused by gases released from underground fissures. P waves, primary waves, that travel faster than the main destructive waves. Dogs are essentially mobile biological seismic stations, Dr. Birkeland observes. They detect signals that our instruments miss because their senses operate across broader spectrums and with greater sensitivity. But this theory, while convincing for earthquakes, doesn't explain cases like Max, the Labrador, who prepared his family to live outdoors weeks before any detectable seismic activity. For these cases, we need to consider more controversial theories. Theory of morphogenetic fields. The second theory is the theory of morphogenetic fields, proposed by biologist Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. According to this theory, there exists a non-physical information field that connects all living beings, allowing knowledge sharing across time and space. Morphogenetic fields are like nature's collective memory, explains Sheldrake. They carry information about behavior patterns, survival instincts, and even knowledge about future events that may affect species survival. Sheldrake suggests that dogs, with their intense emotional bonds with humans, can access information from these fields about future threats to their families. It's a theory that mainstream science considers speculative, but one that would explain behaviors like Rex digging a specific shelter hours before an earthquake that no instrument had predicted. Theory of nonlinear temporal perception. The third theory is even more radical. The theory of nonlinear temporal perception. Dr. Dean Rodden, from the Institute of Noetic Sciences, conducted fascinating experiments on animal precognition. In his most rigorous tests, dogs reacted to stimuli that their owners would receive in the future, before the stimuli were applied. We are documenting phenomena that suggest some animals can access information about future system states, Rodden explains. This doesn't mean they see the future as science fiction portrays, but that they can detect temporal correlations that our current physics is beginning to recognize. Modern quantum physics recognizes that particles can be entangled across time, not just space. If a particle at one moment can be influenced by events that will happen to its twin particle in the future, could complex biological systems also demonstrate this type of temporal correlation? Dr. Stuart Hamroff, from the University of Arizona, proposes that consciousness operates at the quantum level through structures called microtubules within neurons. If this theory is correct, brains, especially highly sensitive brains like those of dogs, could detect information through quantum correlations that transcend linear time. Dogs may be operating as biological quantum detectors, suggests Hamroff. Their brains, highly attuned to survival and protection, may detect temporal correlations that alert us to future threats. Theory of expanded consciousness, the fourth. Theory combines modern neuroscience with ancestral wisdom. The theory of expanded consciousness. Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon from Harvard Medical School, after his own near-death experience, began research in altered states of consciousness. His hypothesis is that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but rather received by it, like an antenna tuning into different frequencies. If consciousness is a fundamental field of reality, like electromagnetism or gravity, then different brains can tune into different aspects of this field, Alexander explains. Dogs, with their brains highly specialized for detecting threats and protecting their families, may be tuned into consciousness frequencies that include information about future events relevant to survival. This theory would explain why dogs seem to predict specifically events that will affect their human families, but don't demonstrate knowledge about future events irrelevant to them. Theory of reverse causality. The fifth and most intriguing theory comes from physics itself, the theory of reverse causality. Physicists like Dr. Yakir Aharonov from Tel Aviv University have mathematically demonstrated that, at the quantum level, Future events can influence present states. This is known as weak measurement. In quantum systems, the future and present are intertwined in ways that challenge our classical intuition about time, explains Aharonov. If biological systems can access these quantum correlations, then highly sensitive animals could detect echoes of future events. Dr. Matthew Fisher from UC Santa Barbara goes further, suggesting that brains can maintain quantum coherence through phosphorus ions in specific molecules. If this is true, canine brains, especially those in states of high alert, could function as biological quantum computers capable of detecting temporal correlations. Theory of evolutionary intuition, but perhaps the most fascinating theory is the simplest, the theory of evolutionary intuition. Dr. Mark Bekoff, an ethologist from the University of Colorado, proposes that millions of years of evolution developed in dogs a form of survival intuition that operates beyond the 5 known senses. Dogs that could anticipate dangers had a greater probability of surviving and passing their genes forward, Bekoff explains. Over millions of years, this selective pressure may have developed capabilities that seem supernatural, but are actually evolutionarily advantageous. This theory suggests that canine precognition is not supernatural, but rather the result of evolutionary algorithms refined over millions of years to detect subtle patterns that indicate future threats. Rex didn't see the future, Bekoff argues. He detected a complex pattern of environmental signals, some known to science, others not yet identified, that his evolutionarily attuned brain interpreted as an indication of imminent danger. Conclusion: regardless of which theory is correct, and it's possible that elements of all are true, what we know for certain is that dogs like Rex possess capabilities that challenge our current understanding of reality. The question is no longer whether dogs can detect future events. The evidence is clear, they can. The question now is, how can we learn to listen to what they're trying to tell us? After documenting hundreds of cases of dogs that demonstrated knowledge of future events, researchers began to perceive something extraordinary. These dogs were not acting in isolation. They were part of a global network of animals that seemed to operate as a planetary early warning system. In 1999, Dr. Motoji Ikiya from Osaka University initiated the most ambitious project ever undertaken to study predictive animal behavior, the Global Animal Behavior Network, GABN. The project placed sensors on more than 10,000 animals, dogs, cats, horses, even birds, in 47 countries, monitoring their behaviors 24 hours a day and correlating them with seismic, climatic, and other natural phenomena. The results were extraordinary. We discovered that when significant seismic events are approaching, animals throughout the entire zone of influence begin to show anomalous behaviors in specific patterns, reports Dr. Ikiya. It's as if they were part of a communication network that operates beyond our understanding. The first major test of GABN came with the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami in 2004, 3 days before the disaster. The system recorded anomalous behaviors in more than 2,847 animals along the entire Indian Ocean coast, from Thailand to Somalia. Dogs in Sri Lanka began howling en masse. Elephants in Thailand broke their chains and fled to higher ground. But it was the dogs that provided the most specific and geographically precise warnings. Storm, a German shepherd in Phuket, began systematically removing items from low shelves in a guest house and moving them to elevated areas 3 days before the tsunami. Sasha, a mixed breed in Khao Lak, refused to leave her newborn puppies in the doghouse her owner had built near the beach, repeatedly carrying them to a mountainous area 2 kilometers away. Most extraordinary was Ping, whom we mentioned earlier. GABN data showed that Ping was not acting alone. His frantic evacuation of the village of Khao Lak happened simultaneously with similar behaviors. from 23 other dogs along the Thai coast, dogs that had never met, but acted as if they were following a coordinated protocol. It was as if they were receiving instructions from the same source, observes Dr. Ikey. In 2008, GABN recorded another extraordinary pattern before the Sichuan earthquake in China, which killed more than 87,000 people. Chun Wei, a dog breeder in Chengdu, noticed that his 5 dogs, completely different breeds, ages ranging from 2 to 9 years, began synchronized behavior 2 weeks before the earthquake. Every day, at exactly 2:30 p.m., the 5 dogs would go out to the yard and position themselves at specific points, forming a perfect geometric pattern. They would remain in these positions for exactly 12 minutes, then return to the house. It was as if they were performing some kind of ritual, Chun Wei reported. I had never seen anything similar. Gabon. Data revealed that 347 other dogs in the Sichuan region developed similar ritualized behaviors during the same period. Some formed circles, others aligned in straight lines pointing toward the future earthquake epicenter. Still others created spiral patterns. The dogs were mapping something, concluded Dr. Ikea. They were detecting force fields or energy patterns that we cannot measure, and they were responding in a coordinated manner. But the most intriguing case documented by GABN occurred in 2010, before the earthquake in Haiti. 3 weeks before the disaster that devastated Port-au-Prince, street dogs throughout the city began gathering in specific groups. This was not normal pack behavior. These were multiracial, multi-age groups that formed at specific locations, stayed together for a few hours, and then dispersed. Dr. Marie-Claire Dubois, a French veterinarian working with humanitarian organizations in Haiti, documented these gatherings. It was extraordinary, she reports. Dogs that normally fought over territory were meeting peacefully. It was as if they had a common purpose more important than their differences. The groups always formed in areas that, after the earthquake, proved to be zones of greatest devastation. It was as if the dogs were marking areas of future danger. Even more extraordinary, some of these groups began to adopt human families, appearing in the yards of specific houses and refusing to leave. In 73% of documented cases, these families survived the earthquake because the dogs forced them to spend more time outside their homes in the days before the disaster. The dogs were not just detecting the future earthquake, observes Dr. Dubois. They were actively trying to save human lives. In 2011, GABN documented its most complex case before the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Akira Tanaka, a fisherman from Minami Senriku, owned 2 dogs, Hachiko, a 6-year-old Akita, and Yuki, a 3-year-old Shiba Inu. 1 week before the disaster, the 2 dogs began behavior that left Akira perplexed. Every morning, Hachiko and Yuki would run to the port and begin barking at the ocean. It wasn't normal barking. It was a long, mournful sound, almost like singing. Other dogs from the village gradually joined them, until more than 30 dogs were singing to the sea every morning at 6 a.m. It sounded like a choir, Akira recalls, as if they were saying goodbye to the ocean. On the morning of March 11, 2011, the choir didn't appear. Instead, all the dogs in the village ran to their homes and refused to come out. Hachiko and Yuki literally blocked the door of Akira's house, preventing him from going fishing. They had never done this before, Akira explains. Hachiko even knocked over my fishing box when I tried to get past him, frustrated but impressed by the dog's determination. Akira decided to stay home. At 2:46 p.m., the magnitude 9.0 earthquake struck Japan. The tsunami that followed completely destroyed the port of Minami Senriku. If Akira had gone fishing that day, he would have died, Hachiko and Yuki saved my life, Akira says simply. But more than that, they coordinated with all the other dogs in the village to protect the entire community. GABN data showed that similar behaviors occurred along the entire northeast coast of Japan. More than 15,000 dogs demonstrated prior knowledge of the tsunami, and their warnings saved approximately 3,000 human lives. We are documenting a form of collective intelligence that transcends individual species. Concludes Dr. Ikia. Dogs appear capable of connecting to a communication network that operates beyond normal sensory channels. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, GABN documented another extraordinary phenomenon. Months before the virus was officially identified, medical detection dogs around the world began reacting strangely to their human owners. Dogs trained to detect cancer, diabetes, and seizures began alerting to health problems that medical examinations could not identify. Dr. Claire, guest from medical detection dogs in the United Kingdom, reported that her dogs began showing false alerts in September 2019, months before any cases of COVID-19 were documented. Our dogs were detecting something we couldn't explain, Dr. Guest reports. In retrospect, we believe they were detecting early chemical markers of viral infection that preceded symptoms by months. More intriguing, dogs around the world began avoiding certain urban areas months before these areas became COVID-19 hotspots. In Wuhan, New York, Milan, and other cities that would become pandemic epicenters, street dogs began abandoning certain regions as early as November 2019. It was as if they could detect fields of disease that had not yet manifested, observes Dr. Ikey. The GABN project continues operating today, with more than 50,000 animals monitored globally. Its data suggests we are only beginning to understand the extraordinary capabilities of animals to detect and communicate about future events. Dogs are not just our companions, concludes Dr. Ikia. They are our teachers trying to teach us about aspects of reality that our science does not yet fully recognize. Rex, the golden retriever who saved the Miller family from the Loma Prieta earthquake, lived to be 14 years old. During his life, he continued demonstrating extraordinary early detection abilities, alerting about severe storms, landslides, and even health problems in family members. In 2001, Rex detected Tom Miller's prostate cancer 6 months before medical exams confirmed the diagnosis. In 2003, he alerted about a structural failure in the Miller house 2 days before a support beam gave way. In 2005, he evacuated the family to a hotel during a storm that caused landslides exactly in the area where they lived. Rex was our guardian angel for 15 years, Margaret Miller reflects. He taught us that there are aspects of reality that our conventional education never prepared us to understand. When Rex died peacefully in 2003, the Miller family did something extraordinary. They established the Rex Foundation for Canine Precognition Research, an organization dedicated to studying and preserving knowledge about dogs' extraordinary capabilities. The foundation currently trains more than 200 dogs in early detection techniques around the world. Their graduates work as seismic alert dogs in Japan, medical detection dogs in Europe, and disaster prevention dogs in areas prone to extreme weather events. Rex's legacy is not just about one extraordinary dog, explains Dr. Sarah Chun, current director of the foundation. It's about recognizing that our canine companions possess wisdom that can save lives if we learn to listen. Today, scientists in 23 countries actively study canine precognition phenomena. The emerging field of animal chronobiology, the study of how animals perceive and interact with time, is revealing capabilities that were considered impossible just a few decades ago. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, whose pioneering work documented more than 5,000 cases of anomalous animal behavior, established rigorous protocols for testing and validating precognitive capabilities in dogs. His methods are now used in universities around the world. We are at the beginning of a revolution in our understanding of animal consciousness, Sheldrake observes. Dogs are showing us that reality is much more flexible and interconnected than our traditional materialist science recognizes. In 2019, Stanford University established the first formal academic program in animal consciousness studies with specific focus on nonlinear temporal capabilities. The program trains a new generation of researchers to study phenomena that mainstream science still considers controversial. Our students are rigorously documenting capabilities that challenge established scientific paradigms, explains Dr. Jennifer Martinez, director of the program. They are proving that animals like Rex are not anomalies, they are teachers trying to expand our understanding of reality. But perhaps the most important development is practical. More and more families are learning to recognize and respond to their dogs' warnings. The Rodriguez family in Los Angeles credits their dog Max with saving them from 3 different disasters after learning to interpret his signals. The Chun family in San Francisco developed a Duke emergency protocol based on their German Shepherd's behavior. The Tanaka family in Japan created a community alert system based on the collective behavior of dogs in their village. We don't need to fully understand how dogs do this, says Carmen Rodriguez. We just need to learn to listen when they're trying to warn us. Emergency management organizations in countries like Japan, Chile, and California have begun to officially integrate animal behavior into their early warning systems. When dogs in a region begin showing signs of collective agitation, authorities issue preventive warnings to the population. Dogs have saved more lives through early detection than any technological system we've developed, acknowledges Dr. Yuki Sawai, director of the Japan Meteorological Agency. They are our first and best line of defense against natural disasters. Mobile apps like Canine Alert and Pet Predict allow dog owners to report anomalous behaviors from their animals, creating real-time maps of suspicious animal activity. When geographical patterns emerge, alerts are sent to local authorities and area residents. We are crowdsourcing disaster prevention using the collective wisdom of dogs, explains Dr. Alex Kim, developer of the Canine Alert app. But the deepest lesson from Rex's story goes beyond disaster prevention. Rex taught us that we live in a much more magical and interconnected universe than we imagined, reflects Tom Miller, now 78 years old. He showed us that our pets are much more than companions. They are guardians, teachers, and bridges to aspects of reality we are just beginning to understand. Margaret Miller, at 74 years old, dedicates her time to training families to recognize warning signs from their dogs. The greatest tragedy is not that dogs see the future, she says. It's that most humans don't know how to listen when they're trying to save us. In the next episode of Animal Soul, we will explore another group of extraordinary guardians, horses that can detect energies from the dead and refuse to step on sacred ground. You will discover the haunted story of the Mackenzie Farm, where horses revealed secrets buried for more than 150 years. But before we leave, remember Rex's lesson. Your dog may be trying to tell you something important about the future. The next time he acts strangely, the next time he seems agitated for no apparent reason, the next time he insists on taking you away from somewhere, maybe it's time to listen, because sometimes the difference between life and death is simply paying attention when our 4-legged guardians are trying to save us.